Imagine waking up to a world where the money you trust vanishes overnight. Not because of a market crash, not because of a thief in the night, but because your own government demands it. It happened before. It's the spring of 1933. Lines of anxious people snake outside American banks. Men in fedoras, women clutching their purses, all holding a single desperate question in their eyes. Will my gold be safe tomorrow? Then, the unthinkable. A presidential order flashes across the headlines. Executive Order 6102. Gold ownership, once a symbol of security, is now a crime. Within days, citizens are forced to hand over their coins, their bars, their family heirlooms. And the penalty for resistance? 10 years in prison, a $10,000 fine, enough to buy a whole house back then. But here's the twist. The gold didn't vanish into thin air. It was seized, melted down, and locked away, transformed into the backbone of a new financial order. The rules of money, rewritten overnight. Now, fast forward to today. We have Bitcoin, digital gold, a new generation's fortress against inflation, against control, against the unknown. But as Bitcoin rises, so do the whispers, new laws, new executive orders, new ways for governments to reach into your digital wallet. What if the government could take your Bitcoin tomorrow? What if the next great wealth grab is already being written, this time in code? Coming up, we're going to expose the secret law that changed money forever. How did the great gold seizure of 1933 really happen? And more importantly, could it happen again? Picture America in 1933. The Great Depression has its icy grip on the nation. Banks are collapsing left and right. Families are losing their homes, their jobs, their hope. Everywhere the air is thick with fear and the scent of desperation. In Washington, President Franklin D. Roosevelt faces a country on the brink of collapse. He needs a solution, and he needs it fast. But there's a huge problem. The government's gold reserves are running dangerously low. Without gold, the US dollar itself is at risk. Back then, every single dollar bill was a promise that it was redeemable for real, physical gold, locked away in the vaults of Fort Knox. But on April 5th, 1933, everything changes. Executive Order 6102 is signed. It's just a single sheet of paper, but it shakes the very foundation of American wealth. The order reads, all persons are required to deliver on or before May 1st, 1933, all gold coin, gold bullion, and gold certificates now owned by them to a Federal Reserve Bank. The message was crystal clear. Your gold is no longer yours. It belongs to the state. Imagine the scene. Ordinary Americans, shopkeepers, farmers, factory workers, standing in long lines at their local banks, clutching bags of coins that had been passed down through generations. Some wept as they surrendered family heirlooms. Others tried to hide a few coins away, hoping the government wouldn't notice. But the risks were terrifyingly real. If you refused, you faced up to 10 years in prison and that life-ruining $10,000 fine. The gold was collected, melted down, recast, and locked away. In return, citizens received paper dollars, fiat currency, backed not by tangible gold, but by a simple government decree. The gold standard, the bedrock of American money for decades, was shattered. Why did this matter so much? Because overnight, the rules of wealth were completely rewritten. Gold, once the ultimate safe haven, became contraband. Trust in money shifted from a tangible, scarce metal to a government promise. And for millions, the lesson was seared into their memory. If the government can take your gold, what can't they take? But the story doesn't end here. This was just the first act in a pattern that would echo through every financial crisis to come. History doesn't just rhyme, it echoes, and it gets louder each time. After 1933, Americans learned to live with paper money. But the memory of the lost gold lingered, a constant warning that the rules of wealth could change in an instant. Now, fast forward to August 15th, 1971. President Richard Nixon appears on national television. His words are calm, but the world is about to shift on its axis again. He says, I have directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold. Temporarily, but that gold window never reopened. In a single broadcast, the very last link between the US dollar and real gold was severed. The world officially entered the era of pure fiat currency, money backed only by trust, by government decree. This is what they call monetary policy in action, the power to create, control, and redefine money itself. And with every new crisis, the pattern repeats. In 2008, the world watched as Wall Street unraveled. Banks failed. Markets crashed. And what did governments do? They scrambled to restore order by unleashing capital controls, limits on withdrawals, emergency bailouts, and a wave of new regulations. Ordinary people lined up at ATMs, just hoping their savings would still be there in the morning. Trust was shaken to its core, and in the chaos of that crisis, something new was born. A mysterious figure, known only as Satoshi Nakamoto, released the Bitcoin white paper. It described a digital currency, completely outside of government control. No central bank, no gold vault. Just pure code, cryptography, and a powerful promise. No one can seize your Bitcoin unless you let them. Bitcoin quickly became the new digital gold, a lifeboat for those who feared the next government grab. But as Bitcoin's value and popularity have soared, so has government attention. We're hearing new debates, seeing new laws, and facing new questions. If the rules changed for gold and for cash, could they change for crypto too? Every crisis brings new controls. Every panic brings a new playbook. And now, as digital assets grow, the pattern is repeating itself, once again. But why is Bitcoin suddenly in the crosshairs? What makes it so dangerous to the old order? We'll explore that next. Imagine a world where money moves without borders, without banks, without needing anyone's permission. A world with no vaults to raid, no central authority to pressure, and no single point of failure. This is the world that Bitcoin promises, and it's a world that frankly terrifies governments. For centuries, rulers have maintained power by controlling the money supply. Gold could be seized. Cash could be printed into oblivion. Banks could be regulated, watched, or even shut down entirely. But Bitcoin is different. It's decentralized. No government prints it. No central bank can inflate its value away. It's completely borderless, zipping from one continent to another in seconds, completely immune to capital controls. To the average person, Bitcoin is often seen as a store of value, a digital safe haven against inflation, currency devaluation, and political chaos. But to governments, it's a sovereign risk. It's a fundamental threat to their monopoly over money itself. The headlines tell the story loud and clear. China bans crypto mining, terrified of capital flight. The United States debates a whirlwind of new regulations, demanding that exchanges collect names, addresses, and detailed transaction histories. Canada freezes the crypto wallets of protesters with a single court order, setting a chilling precedent. Even in Europe, proposals are emerging to track and tax every single digital asset. And whenever hackers steal millions in Bitcoin or ransomware gangs demand payment in crypto, the calls for government control grow even louder. But here's the great paradox. The more that governments try to clamp down on Bitcoin, the more its appeal actually grows. People are students of history. They remember 1933 when the US government confiscated private gold. They remember 1971 when the dollar was taken off the gold standard. They see the pattern repeating. Every crackdown, every new law, every asset seizure serves as a stark reminder. If your wealth is held within the traditional system, it can be taken from you. So the big question is, could governments really seize your Bitcoin the same way they seized gold? Or has the digital age completely rewritten the rules of the game? We're about to dive into the modern playbook for digital asset control and explore how it could directly target you. Imagine waking up one morning to find your digital wallet completely frozen. Not by a hacker, but by the very institutions you were told to trust with your money. This isn't some dystopian science fiction plot. It's already happening. In February 2022, as protests swept across Canada, the government invoked emergency powers. Banks and crypto exchanges were ordered to freeze all accounts linked to the protesters. No trial, no warning. Just a digital lock slammed shut. For thousands of people, their life savings vanished with a single keystroke. Across the globe, China's crackdown has been even more sweeping and severe. Crypto mining was banned, exchanges were shuttered. Billions of dollars in digital assets were wiped from the map virtually overnight. The message was crystal clear. No matter how decentralized the technology is, governments can still target the on-ramps and off-ramps, the critical points where digital money meets the real world. And in the United States, the playbook is being written in real time, right before our eyes. Proposed laws are demanding that exchanges collect exhaustive personal data, KYC, AML, every acronym representing a new layer of surveillance. Wallet addresses are being blacklisted, transactions are being flagged. If your Bitcoin so much as passes through a tainted address, It could be frozen, seized, or simply refused by major platforms. And it doesn't stop there. Executive orders can be signed in a single afternoon, just like the one in 1933 that outlawed gold ownership. A new law, a new regulation, and suddenly your digital assets are in the crosshairs. The tools are technical and modern, but the strategy is ancient. Control the gateways, monitor the flows, and punish the outliers. So could your exchange be forced to freeze your assets overnight? Could your wallet be blacklisted, rendering your coins unspendable? The uncomfortable answer is yes, if you're not prepared. But is there any way to actually protect yourself before it's too late? To understand the threat today, we have to look back at one of the most audacious acts of government overreach in modern history, the Great Gold Confiscation of 1933. In the depths of the Great Depression, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 61102. This order made it illegal for U.S. citizens to own most forms of gold, including coins and bullion. Americans were forced to turn in their gold to the Federal Reserve in exchange for paper dollars. Anyone who refused faced a massive fine or even up to 10 years in prison. The government justified this by saying it was necessary to combat the Depression. In reality, it was a move to devalue the dollar and gain total control over the nation's monetary system. They couldn't devalue the currency while people could still hold on to gold, so they simply took the gold. Now, fast forward to today. The world is digital, and the asset is Bitcoin. Can they pull off the same trick? Well, yes and no. The strategy is similar, but the battlefield has changed. Governments today don't need to send agents door to door to confiscate your Bitcoin. They can target the choke points. These choke points are the centralized exchanges, the Coinbases, the Binances, the Krakens of the world. These platforms are the primary way most people buy and sell crypto. And because they operate as registered businesses, they are subject to government regulations. They already require your ID, your address, and your bank information. If the government issues an order, these exchanges would be legally compelled to freeze your account, seize your funds, or report your entire transaction history. Remember the Canadian protesters? The government didn't hack their wallets, they just called the exchanges. But what if you don't keep your Bitcoin on an exchange? What if you're smart and practice self-custody, holding your crypto in your own personal hardware wallet? This is where the game gets more interesting. With self-custody, you hold the private keys. You are your own bank. No one, not the government, not an exchange, can access your Bitcoin without those keys. This is the core promise of decentralization. However, even self-custody isn't a magic shield. Governments have other tactics. They can blacklist specific wallet addresses. If your address is flagged for being associated with illicit activity, or even just for not being linked to a KYC'd identity, exchanges and merchants could be forbidden from interacting with it. Your coins wouldn't be stolen, but they'd become incredibly difficult to spend or convert back to cash. It's like having a bar of gold that no one is allowed to buy from you. Then there's the nuclear option, a blanket ban. A government could, in theory, make it illegal to own, transact, or even hold Bitcoin, just like they did with gold. But enforcing this would be a monumental challenge. Unlike gold, which is a physical object, Bitcoin is just information. It can be stored on a tiny USB drive or even memorized as a 12-word seed phrase. How can you confiscate a memory? This is the ultimate checkmate against government overreach. They can shut down exchanges, they can blacklist addresses, they can make threats. But they cannot physically seize Bitcoin from someone who has secured their private keys and understands how to use the network peer-to-peer. The 1933 gold grab worked because gold was physical and stored in centralized locations like bank vaults. The government knew where to find it. Bitcoin, when held correctly, exists everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It's secured by mathematics, not by vaults and guards. So, the modern digital asset seizure isn't a raid. It's a squeeze. It's about making Bitcoin so difficult, so inconvenient, and so legally risky to use that most people will just give up and comply. They will target the on-ramps and off-ramps, tax it excessively, and surround it with a thicket of red tape. The fight for financial freedom in the 21st century won't be fought with soldiers, but with software. It will be a battle between centralized control and decentralized technology. For those who value their sovereignty, the lesson is clear. Learn about self-custody. Understand how the technology works. Don't leave your life savings on an exchange, because that's the modern equivalent of storing your gold in a government-controlled bank. History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. The threat is real, but this time we have a tool that the citizens of 1933 could only dream of. The question is, will we learn how to use it? History's playbook is being rewritten, but the core moves, they stay the same. Back in 1933, the government's target was something you could touch. Gold coins jingled in pockets. They were hidden in sock drawers. They glinted in family safes. Seizure was a physical act. Federal agents could literally knock on your door, demand your gold, and walk away with your wealth tucked inside a canvas bag. It was tangible, direct, and brutally effective. Fast forward to today. The battlefield has gone digital. Your Bitcoin isn't stacked in a vault. It's scattered across the blockchain, protected by layers of cryptography, completely invisible to the naked eye. But don't be fooled. The new tools of control are just as real, if not more insidious. Back then, compliance was enforced with the threat of prison time and crushing fines. Now, it's enforced with code. A wallet address gets flagged. An exchange account is frozen. A transaction is denied by an invisible algorithm you can't even argue with. The mechanism has changed, but the outcome is identical. Your assets are no longer yours. In 1933, the gold standard was shattered by a single executive order. It was a swift, decisive move that changed the financial landscape overnight. Today, a few lines of regulation, passed in the name of security or stability, could blacklist millions of digital wallets in an instant. The scale and speed are unprecedented, and this brings us to the great myth of our time. It can happen again. In the comfortable belief that we're somehow beyond the reach of such history. The truth? It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. In fact, it's already starting. From Canada freezing the accounts of protesters, to China's sweeping crypto bans, from the US to the EU, governments are actively testing the limits. They're probing, seeing just how much control they can exert over these new forms of digital wealth. The key difference now is speed. Technology moves at the speed of light, while law plods along. But make no mistake, law always catches up. And when it does, it often does so with overwhelming force. So, what's the next move in this high-stakes game of financial chess? And more importantly, how do you make sure you're not just a pawn on the board? How can you stay one step ahead? Coming up, we're going to break down the final lesson. How to actually protect your wealth in this new age of digital seizures. History isn't just a collection of stories, it's a warning written in gold, in paper, and now in code. Every single era has its preferred safe haven asset, until suddenly the rules change. In 1933, Americans learned a harsh lesson. Even solid gold, the ultimate store of value for millennia, could be taken overnight by their own government. Then in 1971, the promise that every US dollar was backed by gold vanished with a single televised speech, severing the last link and turning the dollar into pure fiat currency. Fast forward to 2008. Trust in the entire banking system evaporated as people's ISA savings were put at risk, and the rules were rewritten on the fly to bail out the very institutions that caused the crisis. Now, as Bitcoin and other digital assets rise to prominence, the pattern is becoming crystal clear. When established power feels threatened by a new form of value it can't easily control, it acts. And it acts fast, decisively, and without apology. But here is the crucial truth you need to internalize. Awareness is your first and most powerful line of defense. Understanding these historical cycles, recognizing the government's playbook, and spotting the warning signs, this is how you begin to protect what's yours. Don't be the person who waits for the next executive order, the next emergency law, or the next temporary freeze that mysteriously becomes permanent. So what can you do? First, diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, whether it's digital or physical. Second, learn how to truly own your assets. Understand what self-custody means and how to do it securely. Third, stay informed. Pay attention to new regulations and global financial trends. And most importantly, never, ever fall into the trap of thinking, it can't happen here. The next financial seizure is not a matter of if, but when and how. Will you be ready when it comes? Or will you be left holding a digital promise that's suddenly worth nothing? The answers are all hidden in history, if you just know where to look. Subscribe for more of this hidden financial history and learn how to protect your wealth before the next crisis hits. And stick around, because next time, we're going to uncover the forgotten story of the world's very first currency ban. A tale even more shocking than the 1933 gold seizure. You won't want to miss it.